Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Anything and Everything, the show which acknowledges that everyone has a story. I'm your host and producer, Halima Sharif. I'm excited once again to bring you another segment of our New Orleans Music Legends series, where we have had amazing conversations with Edward Kid Jordan and his daughter Rachel, Jermaine Basil, Victor Goines, Donald Harrison Jr., Nicholas Payton, Herlin Riley, and today we have the King of Treme himself, Shannon Powell. Welcome, Brother Shannon.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh, listen, I'm grateful that you are joining us this evening. But before we get started, allow me to share with everyone a little bit of what has happened in your world. Shannon Powell.
Please.
Yes, Shannon Powell is a highly sought after drummer and percussionist who has achieved international acclaim for his commanding technique and style. He has performed all over the world with notables in jazz. In his early career, Powell toured extensively with Harry Connick Jr. and released 2 platinum albums with Connick, including We Are in Love and Blue Light, Red Light. He also recorded Lofty's Roach Souffle with Connick. During subsequent years, Powell has toured with Wynton Marsalis and Jazz at Lincoln Center, Marcus Roberts, Diana Krall, Dr. John Earl King, the Preservation Hall Jazz Band, and John Schofield. Powell has also recorded with a long list of noteworthy artists, including Ellis Marsalis, Jason Marsalis, Nicholas Payton, Donald Harrison, Irvin Mayfield, Blind Boys of Alabama, and the Preservation Hall Jazz Band. Currently, Shannon is a band leader and has recorded his own CD, Powell's Place, which showcases a mix of traditional and original jazz songs and also features Powell on vocals. Shannon is considered a leading force on the traditional jazz circuit and also serves as an educator and clinician. He has been featured at workshops presented at universities and jazz festivals all over the world. Considered a living legend in New Orleans music, Shannon Powell, as I said earlier, is known as the King of Treme, the neighborhood where he grew up.
That's
right. You know it, which has given birth to countless musical inspirations and innovations. Once again, let's welcome the King of Treme, Shannon Powell.
Thank you so much. So good to be on here with you, daughter.
I'm excited to have you here, brother. It's an honor.
Thank you for having me.
Indeed. So Shannon, tell everybody about your musical journey.
Well, you know, as you mentioned, I call myself the King of Treme because people don't understand. You know, I have a lot of people that always ask me, how can you be self-appointed king? I said, well, you haven't been around here long enough for me to explain that to you. You know, when I was a kid growing up in the Treme, I was actually the only kid playing music in the Treme back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s. There weren't any kids playing music, like Trombone Shorty and all these kids today, and James Andrew. I didn't have no help when I was a kid. I was by myself in the Treme. You know, so that's why I call myself the King of Treme. People don't realize the dues I have paid in this neighborhood, city of New Orleans. There are a lot of dues at a young age. I used to hang in places when I was a kid when I wasn't really supposed to be there at that time of the night. That sort of thing. You know, I was hanging out trying to learn and, you know, being mischievous as a boy, you know, that comes up beat, you know. But I was what you call cheeky. I was always somewhere I had no business, you know what I'm saying? But I became acquainted with great musicians, and I became good friends with a lot of people, like, for instance, Mr. Charlie Barron, who used to own the Lou and Charlie's, our only jazz club we had back in the 70s, right here in New Orleans. And I was a kid back then, and I used to play my drums in my living room where I'm sitting at right now talking to you, darling, the same house. And I remember one day, Charlie Barron and his wife, Lula, knocked on my door. They heard me playing. And they didn't realize I was a kid. You know, they thought I was a grown man, you know. So he told me who he was and where he came from, St. Louis, Missouri. And he and his wife had an idea to open up a club in New Orleans. They didn't know nobody. I was the first musician they met in New Orleans. So I, in turn, introduced them to the great Mr. James Black, who lived right around the corner from me on Ursuline Street. And I knew, listening to Mr. Barron and his ideas of what he wanted to do, that he had to meet Mr. James Black, because Mr. James Black was straight up New Orleans modern bebop jazz back then, you know. Because I came up, you know, under church and traditional New Orleans style playing. I was really into bebop and hardcore progressive jazz because I didn't really know about it.
Right.
You know, it was all new to me. But I knew Mr. Black knew about it because I used to go over and stand in front of his door as a kid and listen to this man play. That's how I knew that the drums that I was playing as a kid, traditional New Orleans second line music, I knew that that music was more to it than what I was learning as a kid. I knew that's the next stage when I was listening to Mr. Black, you know what I'm saying? Because the music starts with the traditional music. You know, that's where the music starts, the New Orleans trad music. That's the heart of the swing music. And I knew, listening to him, that eventually that's what I would have to be, you know what I'm saying? So I became good friends with Mr. James Black, and he taught me a lot of things. And in this neighborhood, growing up was so precious for me, and I would do anything to get that same feeling again, because I had an opportunity to hang out with older musicians that were way older than me, that were great musicians. Like, for instance, your father.
Yeah.
You know, I met your father years ago when I was a young man, and he taught me so much about what I have to prepare for.
Yes.
And everything he told me to this day still sticks with me in my mind when he told me about learning how to read music and things like, because he used to come home up from New York doing those Broadway shows and tell me, he said, boy, I got a gig for you. All you got to do is get them eyes ready.
Oh, man, that's funny.
He said, you got them eyes ready yet? I said, not yet. I said, not yet. He said, what you waiting on? I said, I'm working on it, you know. But back then, I was in junior high school.
Wow.
And I told him, and he knew the band director, Mr. Donald Richardson. So he even came back there one day and told Mr. Richardson, you know, he made sure Mr. Richardson helped me out. He told him, he said, this young kid has a promising career. Make sure he learns how to read, you know. And but your father was a great inspiration to me as a kid. And like I said, he passed on some very, very knowledgeable things to me about being a professional, not only playing, but as a professional man, you know, as a professional musician. And I loved him for that, and I miss him too.
Amen.
But a lot of great musicians in the Treme lived right around, like down the street. Before I was born, in the same block that I grew up in, the great Mr. Urell Palmer lived in this block.
That's right, that's right.
You know, yeah, and around the corner, the great John Boudreaux, who lives in Los Angeles, one of the greatest drummers ever lived right around the corner, and him and Smokey Johnson used to practice every day for about 7 or 8 hours. They would be in there practicing.
Wow.
Yeah, you know. So I grew up around so much, you know, wonderful singers. The great trombone player, Mr. Jim Robinson, lives right down the street from me. He later on, when he passed away, Nicholas Payton and his father, Walter Payton, moved in that house. You know, so I was always surrounded by great musicians in the Treme. Very fortunate, and you know, like I tell people, I came up playing in the church. I stood in church all day on Sundays. I started off in the Catholic church at St. Louis Cathedral because I was an altar boy. I went to school there at St. Louis Cathedral School. So I became an altar boy, and I would go do the 9 o'clock mass. But after 9 o'clock mass, I would go with my auntie who lived in the house with us to the Methodist Church, by St. James Methodist Church, by Reverend Tilly.
Oh, yes, that's right. I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, by Reverend Tilly on Ursuline Street. And from there, she and I would go to musicals on Sundays. You know, you remember years ago they have all these musicals?
That's right.
At all these Baptist churches. Well, we would go to the musicals. So I was in church on Sundays all day. And that helped me with my career playing music because I learned to play with 100-piece choirs.
Wow.
Like a group called the Voices of Triumph. I played with them when I was 13 years old.
was a blessing.
The Voice of the Crime was led by the great Miss Ruby Simmons Porter. Wonderful woman, knew a lot about music. And she took me into her homes and told me, she said, boy, I'm going to teach you how to play. And at that time, I looked at her and I said, oh, this lady going to teach me how to play drums. But she showed me a whole lot about playing with the brushes and the mallets, things like that they were teaching when I went to school. I already knew, you know what I'm saying, about how to play, you know what I'm saying, because I was taught by her and all these other elderly people that I've come up around, like the great Edward Frank, you know, Mr. Kid Jordan, Mr. Ellis Marcellus. I was very fortunate to hang around these people at an early age. And they used to always ask me, boy, who are your people? Where your mom and daddy?
They became your people in addition
That's
to
right.
mom and daddy.
That's right. That's the way that happened. They became my people. That's right. And like I said, some of them was very strict. Some of them was stricter than others, you know. Some of them wasn't that friendly. But they had time, they took time to tell me something if they saw where I was out of line. And that meant so much to me today, you know, because they didn't have to do it. You know, a lot of people taught me things, you know, right from wrong, and how to be a human being as well as a musician, you know. I was so blessed and fortunate. And I came up, like I said, in the Treme, which is, I lived like 3 blocks from the French Quarter.
That's right.
So I would always run away from home. My mom would be looking for me, and I'd be in the French Quarters by all the music. See, and I'd go up and down Bourbon Street, and back then, Bourbon Street ain't nothing like it is now. I mean, back then, Bourbon Street was classic. I tell people all the time, I remember when people used to come from all over the world and wear evening gowns, and the guys had tuxedos on. And they had limousines and all that out there in the French Quarter. It ain't nothing like it is now.
No, you don't see that right now.
No. Bourbon Street was classy act. You know, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, all of them hanging at the Lucky Pierre Club. You know, Preservation Hall was top notch back then. The Maison Bourbon, all they had nothing but jazz clubs in New Orleans back then on Bourbon Street. If it was a jazz club or a burlesque club, that's how it went. Now they got T-shirt shops and all kinds of different things, you know. But back then you had all the clubs had jazz bands. So there was a lot of music, a lot of great white musicians as well as black musicians. That was, because back then when I came along, things had started integrating a little bit, see, back in the 70s, you know, things had started opening up. But I met the great Al Hurt. I became good friends with him, and I became good friends with the great Pete Fountain, you know. Because I was, like I said, I was very young and ambitious, and I was on the scene all the time. Sometimes people used to run me, you know, and tell me don't come around no more. But I'd come back again.
Man, that's a blessing. You know, the fact that you're in the Treme, you're still in the Treme, you know, and a lot of folks who are not from New Orleans don't truly understand the blessings that we all encountered living in New Orleans, but alone being in the Treme area with all those wonderful musicians, all those educators, you know.
Yeah, well, I came along and I followed what I saw. I mean, I tap danced on Bourbon Street. I shined shoes on Bourbon Street. I did a whole lot. I did things that I saw other people doing to not only make money, but to me it was fun. Being getting acquainted with tourists, people you don't even know, and people, you know, being nice to you. It was fun. I was a kid, you know what I'm saying? I was always looking to hustle. That was my number one thing, because I was very greedy. I liked to eat. So I used to hang out Buster Holmes. Buster Holmes was on Orleans and Burgundy Street. And he had red beans and rice for a quarter and a nickel, 30 cents.
Man.
And that was my hustle. That was my hustle, 30 cents to get me a plate of beans at Buster Holmes. Wow. And I become a regular there. I was, as a kid, I even brought some of my friends from school, and I still started hanging at Buster Holmes on a regular basis because they had a lot of jazz funerals that would start and end there. Like when a lot of the great old musicians would pass away, that's where the funeral would start. The band would meet there and they'd bring the people to the funeral parlor. Yeah, and that's where I used to always be. Buster Holmes.
So I interviewed Nicholas Payton recently, and we were talking about the influence that Danny Barker had on his life. And I know you had similar experience. Talk about that relationship that you had with Danny Barker.
I introduced Mr. Barker to Nicholas Payton.
Okay, so all right, so you introduced him.
I introduced him to Mr. Payton, to Mr.
Wow,
Barker.
man, talk to
What
me.
happened?
That's
I
interesting.
had a gig offered to me on Barron Street.
Okay.
I was in my 20s, and Mr. Barker came to help me out with the job because it was new to me, and I was very green at, you know, doing this type of thing, but things had gotten to the point where things were changing drastically on Barron Street.
Right.
And club owners was always looking for new talent. And I had been out there enough playing with different bands where my name sort of got out there a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the owners at the place called the Famous Door,
Yes.
his name was Nick Caracci.
You know, you just reminded me. I remember now. He did mention that. That's right.
Yeah. The Famous Door.
Mm-hmm.
The guy offered me the gig, and I told him, he told me at that time, because the money was very light back then because things were slow. And so he said to me, "Can you get a 3-piece band?"
That's right.
I said, "Well, I could try." You know, so I'm thinking about a drum, piano, and bass.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I couldn't get that. So I talked to Mr. Barker, who was a big influence in my life. It wasn't for him. I tell people a lot. I don't think my career would have been as great as it is today. He played a big part of my life, not only as not only I was his protege, but he was like a father to me. You know, he was very much like a daddy to me. And if I could just change the subject of
No, go ahead.
Just to tell you how I met Mr. Barker.
Yes.
I met Mr. Barker through James Andrews' father.
Okay.
James Andrews Sr., who we call 12.
Mm-hmm.
12 was hanging at a club on the corner by my house back then in the 70s, a place called the Three Brothers Lounge.
Okay.
And every Sunday, they would have a band play there. The band was named the AFBs. Walter Wolfman Washington was a member, and the guy by the name of Dixon played the bass. And they had a band called the AFB. Marcel Richardson was on the piano.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a band called the AFBs. So every Sunday, the AFBs would play at the Three Brothers Lounge. Well, by me living right 3 doors away from the club, I always had my sticks in my hand, and I was standing at the corner, listening to the band in the bar, because I could never go in the bar because I was a kid.
Yes.
But my mother was in there because she liked the music, and she was going there, and I knew the owner. So one day, he came and got me off the street in the corner. He said, "Come on, you want to play them drums?" And I went there and made my debut and played the Bourbon Street Parade.
Wow.
And tore the house up.
Yes, indeed.
And Mr. Barker happened to be in the club that day because 12 been telling Mr. Barker about me. He said, "Man, they got a little cat in the 6th ward. You got to meet him, Mr. Barker. He played the drum. He good, you know." So Mr. Barker happened to be in there that day. And the rest is history. He talked to me, and he very clever man, very soft, you know, and very cool, calm collector. You know, he told me about who I reminded him of, and he told me who he was. And I told him I heard a lot about him, but I was glad to meet him because I was hanging out with his nephews, his great nephews, Lucian Barron and Charles Barron. Okay, so I had to let him know I knew of you, but I didn't know you.
Right.
But the rest is pretty much history. And he and I became like this. He helped my career as a child. You know, like when you're a child, you know, you're pretty much always on what you call a learning basis.
That's right.
You know, you're always learning and trying to become a great musician. Well, he never treated me like that. He always treated me like I was a musician.
Yes.
Already. I played gigs with him when I was a kid, just he and I. I made money with this man when I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
I was bringing home so much money, sometimes more than my grandmother was making. She was working at a Circle Food store in the meat department.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a kid coming home, you know, working with Mr. Barker, helping pay the tuition at St. Louis Cathedral, because we had three of them, me, my sister, and my brother. We went to St. Louis Cathedral. So I would always give her the money. Well, rather, he would give her the money. He never give me the money. he always give the money to my grandmother, which was the right thing.
It was.
Because I was going to do
That's
nothing.
right.
Yeah, spin it up on the pinball machine.
That's funny.
You know, so yeah, so you know, as a kid, I played with him, and he always, like I said, he always treated me like I was a musician, and he always had things to teach me. Every single gig, I got a lesson about how to play my drums and how to be, you know, professional on the job. You know what I'm saying? Like taking breaks and things like that. I used to take them and disappear. He didn't like that when I disappeared, because sometimes the people that hired us would be wanting the band to start back before the break ends. So if they ask us to play a song and I'm not around, that makes him look bad. See?
Yeah.
These little things like that, you know, I didn't know because I was a kid, see? And I was somewhere outside. You know, he looking all over for me. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
But things like that, you know, leaving my drumsticks, I can't forget. I forget one day I left the drumsticks on, and he was so mad. He went in the people's yard and cut 2 branches off the tree and give them to me.
Ain't that something?
So,
Yeah.
and I'm crying. I was sitting there crying. And he said, "Don't cry, let's play. We got a gig to play." But that's a lesson,
Wow.
you know. I had to learn, and then I had to go around the corner. Thank God, Mr. Freddie Coleman, another great drummer, who was a good friend of mine, happened to live around the corner from the gig where we was at. And I was able to go around there on a break and get some real drumsticks. And he taught me a lesson that same day.
Wow. You see that right around the corner.
Yeah.
So Shannon, you know, we know New Orleans has a rich drum legacy. Can you speak on some of the important contributors to this great lineage, past to present? Also, can you start from the beginning, if you will, with drummers such as Paul Barron and Bobby Dodds?
Yeah, Baby Dodds.
I didn't mean
Baby
to say,
Dodds.
I meant to say Baby Dodds. Yeah.
Baby Dodds. Well, that's the king right there. It all started with Baby Dodds.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody took his lead, you know, from New Orleans back. New Orleans became so famous because he was the cat, Baby Dodds, and then behind him came the great Paul Barron.
That's right.
Paul Barron was another one. Yeah, he came behind Baby Dodds, and he went to New York and upset him, just like Baby Dodds. You know what I'm saying? And you know, it's a funny thing about New Orleans drummers. If you look at the history books, and you can see the drummers that left New Orleans and went to New York, they all were very successful. Very successful because of the style of drums that we played out here,
Okay.
and the syncopated rhythms that New Orleans rhythms have,
That's right.
and the influence that New Orleans rhythms have on other musicians. You know what I'm saying? And the musicians in New York, they all love New Orleans drum because we played a lot of bass drum. See, New York drummers, they don't play bass drum too much. They play the bass drum on 4 or 2 and 4, you know. But New Orleans drummers, we accent on the bass drum, and we played syncopated rhythms and, you know, second line feelings and
Yes.
things like that, you know. But New York drummers, they play straight, what they call straight ahead. Time, they keep more time. You know, New Orleans drummers, we put something in there where you can dance.
Yeah, we know. You know.
And you know, I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm talking about, you know, great drummers that left New Orleans years ago, and you know, like the great Vernell Fournier.
Yes,
Who
right.
played on the recording Poinciana with the great Ahmad Jamal.
That's right.
I mean, he went to New York and never came back to New Orleans. He was very successful in New York. You know, the great Urell Palmer, the king of recording. You know, he was the most recordingest drummer in the world.
That's right.
He became the president of the Musicians Union in Los Angeles.
That's right.
You know, we're talking about business now. You know, people that tell me about not only being a great drummer, but being a great businessman.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? You know, a whole bunch of cats. The great Edward Blackwell. You know, he left New Orleans and went up there and was very successful in New York. You know, these people that paved the way for me and Urell, you know what I'm saying, to go, you know, to be the musicians that we are. We have a strong legacy to keep up. You know what I'm saying?
We surely do. And generations afterwards.
Yeah.
You toured with Harry Connick Jr. for a while. What was that like?
About 10 years, yeah, I did that for 10 years. It was a wonderful time for me in my life. You talking about, like we talking about business, you know, all that was good for the business part of my life because it was great exposure. You know, the sort of exposure that I received on that gig, a lot of drummers can't pay for that. You know, I was very exposed. I was the most seen jazz drummer in the world when I played with Harry Connick. I was on TV every night. You know what I'm saying? I did a lot of recording. I did a lot of TV shows. And because, like I said, Harry played jazz, I was the most seen jazz drummer ever on TV back then. Those 10 years I did with him. We did every major TV show, Johnny Carson, every, you know, all the daytime shows, nighttime shows, you know, Arsenio Hall, and, you know, all those people, you know. And it was a great time for me. You know, like I said, my name really got out there in the music world. Like right now, you know, you can pretty much mention my name anywhere in the world, the people know me. And that's a blessing, you know, that's a blessing, you know, to be on earth and to be able to get your name out there like that so quick. Harry blew up very fast. You know, it was an overnight success sort of thing with him.
Yes. And
when I first joined the band, it was just the three of us. He and I and the great bass player by the name of Ben Wolf. You know, we had a hot trio. The trio record came out really good too. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Off this Roach Souffle.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, you know, but it also I learned a lot on that gig too. You know, because we went from trio to big band. So I had to pull out my reading chops. See what your dad was telling me.
Yeah,
it came in handy. See, you know what I'm saying? I was able to read, and the things that I didn't know, I had Harry right there because he loved to meet me and him were very tight. We come up sort of like in the 70s because Harry was come up, he about 5 years younger than me. But when I was hanging with Mr. Barker, Harry was hanging with his father. His father was a district attorney of New Orleans, of course you know that. Well, he would bring Harry around, and Mr. Barker would bring me around. So me and Harry always bumped heads when we was kids, see. And Harry played this one song, "Yes Sir, That's My Baby." And every time he would play, they would put me on the drums, see. So we came up in New Orleans from from childhood. And when he hired me, I was in London, I was in England, Europe, working. I was living in Europe when Harry was looking all over for me in New Orleans. He couldn't find me, but he called up with me. I was living in Europe with the ambassador, Miss Lillian Boutte. Yeah, I was traveling all over Europe playing with Miss Lillian Boutte, and Harry called up with me. He was in England doing a movie called Memphis Bell, and somebody told him I was in Germany, and he got a number on me, and the rest is history. He invited me to come play with him, and I was sort of afraid to leave my good gig with Miss Lillian because I had such a good gig, and I was doing really good, you know, and I had left New Orleans because I was trying to do some other things and get my life and my career started. And I had really, the Lord had blessed me tremendously. I was doing really good with her. So I was kind of afraid to take the gig from him because I didn't know, you know, that he was famous as he was, because I left New Orleans, he had got really popular, you know.
That's right.
So I kept telling him, I said, look, man, you call me back. And he said, look, I can't hold it again too long now if you want it, you know. And I had Lillian at that time, she played as my manager.
Yeah.
So she talked to his manager, and Lillian was the one advised me to take the job. As much as it hurted her, because, you know, she loved me too, me and her. Like,
That's right.
she was like my big sister, you know.
Yes.
Lillian Booth was like my big sister, still is. And she was the one that advised me to take the gig. She said, this is going to be good for your career.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, and I said, are you serious? I said, I don't want to go out here and this man, you know. But it turned out that she was right. It really was a good time for me. And like I tell everybody, a lot of people always, you know, people want to know your business. Oh, why you here with Harry? I said, well, it didn't have nothing to do with music. It was all business.
It was all business.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And, yeah, it was all business. And unfortunately, me and his manager didn't see eye to eye. We weren't enemies. But, you know, like I said, it was a business decision on both of our ends. Because I love his manager too. She was good people for me too. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to say nothing bad about her.
No, I understand. I understand.
Yeah, she was good people, but she just, at the time of my life and the time I had been with Harry, I was starting asking for different things that they didn't want to accommodate me with, that I thought I deserved. So that's all. I just, you know how it is. You got to move on.
That's right. You got to keep it moving.
Yeah. And when I moved on, God has been just as good to me as he was when I was with him.
Amen.
The Lord bless him. Yeah, he blessed me.
Right. That's right. You know, Shannon, I have asked this question before, and I'm curious to learn more from you. Who would you say are some unsung New Orleans musicians that played a major role in your development? And you name a few already, and I know that's a long running list, but who are some of those unsung heroes of New Orleans?
Well, like the gentleman I mentioned, my junior high school teacher, Mr. Donald Richardson. Donald Richardson was not only a good band director at school, he also was a great choir director in the Baptist churches. He had wonderful choirs, and he just was a good person. And he understood kids. You know, he knew how to get through kids. And he was one of the persons that I thought didn't get as much recognition around New Orleans as he should have. You know, like the great Mr. Urell Hampton at St. Augustine.
Yes, that's right.
You know what I'm saying? These people, you know, yeah, these people, and Mr. Warren Bell Sr.
That's right.
I knew him very well.
That's right.
I knew him very well. I used to work at the Municipal Auditorium when I was a teenager in the concession department. I used to always see them over there. Mr. Carl Bloin and all the people that was in the band reading. See them reading. Every time a show come there, it was right there. You know what I'm saying? Kid Jordan, ringleader, right there. Your daddy, yeah, your father. You know, all the great, you know, musicians from New Orleans that could read and play.
That's
you know what I'm saying? The great Clarence Ford.
Oh, yeah.
You know yeah, he was such a Mr. Edward Frank.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what a genius. The man played with one hand better than a piano player played with two hands.
It's amazing.
You know, these people was a great trumpet player. He played with your daddy at the Blue Room, Mr. Frank Trapani.
I remember that name. That's right.
Frank Trapani. Him and your daddy was good friends. They both could read and play, you know. But a lot of people played a big part in my life as I was coming up. The great Mr. David Lasty. That's Hurlin's uncle.
That's right.
That family, I hung around them too when I was a kid, see. And a lot of that talent rubbed off on me. Because there was a talented family. Hurlin come from a talented family.
He does.
And powerful, spiritual people.
That's right.
You know, that's why Hurlin played. That's why Hurlin's so great and played the way he played. Because he come from the source. Yeah, his people are deep. He's deep. His uncle Melvin Lasty, and his uncle Walter Popete, the drummer. But the one I'm talking about, David Lasty, he played the sax. And he had a band called The Taste of New Orleans. And I happened to be in that band, and what a great experience that was for me, because that gave me an opportunity to learn about playing New Orleans rhythm and blues, see? Because he was the king of the blues, the New Orleans soulful blues type, you know. And I was able to pick up on that. And then show you how God blessed me. At that time, the great George Porter from the Meters was in the band.
Wow.
So I picked up on learning how to play New Orleans funk from being around George Porter. Because I never knew I never really was interested in playing bebop, rhythm and blues, or funk. I never was interested in none of that. It never interested me. But because where I come from, who I was, and the people I was hanging around, I had no choice. It was in me. Yeah, I was because I was constantly learning.
That's right.
I was on the gigs with these people.
That's right.
You know, and when I didn't know something, they was right there showing me and telling me.
Wow,
you know,
what a reward.
I've been blessed all my life.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of artists can't say that. A lot of people can't say that. You know, can you recall a wow, I can't believe this great thing has happened to me moment? I mean, I know you have quite a few, but can you recall one?
Oh yeah. When I was invited as a kid to play on the stage with the great Jimmy Smith at the Jazz Festival.
Oh man.
What happened, I was on stage and they had some congos back there. And he was playing with his band. This was at the Jazz Festival, the Municipal Auditorium. And I happened to be there that night because I wanted to see the great Max Roach. Yes. He was in town that night. And he came on after Jimmy Smith. So I was playing, I was backstage on the stage. And I was playing the bongos while he was playing. And he looked at that and saw that. And he told the people to get me a mic. He said, get that child a mic. He said, get that child a mic. And the man put the light on me and he put the mic and he told me to start playing. I started playing. And that to me, I was about 13. Wow. I was 13 years old. Wow. Yep. And I met Mr. Max Roach that night. And me and him took a picture. I still have the picture today. And he wrote me a nice thing. He said, to Shannon, stay strong and play long. Max Roach.
Beautiful.
That's right.
Beautiful.
Yeah, you know, and that was a great moment for me. And other moments is when I played, the first time I ever played, you know, I did the Oscars award.
When was that?
With Harry Connick. I did the Oscars award. This was back in the 90s. That's the year, let me see. Yeah, I think that's the first time, somebody that's famous, first time winning the Oscar. But we was there because we played the music. Harry was nominated for playing. We did the score for the Godfather 3 music.
Oh, I remember
the movie, The Godfather 3.
That's right.
So we did the movie score. So Harry was nominated for that. Yes. And we played that night. We played a song called Promise Me You Remember. Yeah. And to me, you know, coming from the Treme and doing something like that, that was really big for me that night.
Of course.
You know, I even called home and talked to my auntie on the phone and she was crying, you know, and we had a moment.
That's right.
You know, because that was some big things for me, you know. Yeah, straight from the Treme to the Oscars award, you know.
Yes, indeed.
And the struggle, you know, like I said, you know, a lot of people don't know, you know, the dues I paid at a young age here in New Orleans to be Shannon Powell and to be the King of Treme, you know.
Man, that's a blessing. You had you and many others had such a rich foundation, you know, upbringing. You know, you mentioned, go ahead, Shannon. What were you going to say?
I was getting ready to tell you, because I got away from the story about me introducing Nicholas to Mr. Barker.
Yes.
I just got to tell you right quick about that.
Oh, go ahead.
It was such a great time. Nicholas was about 16 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and he wasn't even supposed to be in the bar room.
I remember that.
So when this was so funny. So Mr. Barker, I told Mr. Barker, I said, look, Nicholas Payne, Walter Payton's son, which Mr. Barker had heard about, you know, because Nicholas became a household name around New Orleans, very young. And I said, I got the young guy, Nicholas Payne, on the picture. He said, young, how young? I said, he's 16. 16? Well, how you gonna get in the club? I said, I don't know, Mr. Barker. I said, he kind of looked like an old man when he put that coat on. I said, he'll be all right. So Mr. Barker always had a bag that he carried on gigs. I never forget as a child. He always had a bag of hats, different kind of hats. Yeah, and he'd always give it to the band members to put that on your head. Put your head, you take one on your head. So when we got to the gig, he looked at Nicholas and he said to Nicholas, hey, get your one of them hats out there, bag. He said, we gotta make you look old, and you know, which was true, because the club owner, he was nervous to death. And I had to tell him, I said, look, he young, but I said, he can really play. I said, you're gonna really like the way this band sounds. So we just had me, Mr. Barker, and Nicholas. And when I tell you, Mr. Barker was so impressed on Nicholas, he just kept looking at him like that, playing with banjo. He looked at him like that the whole night.
Oh, wow.
And he asked me again, whose son is that? I said, that's Walter Payne's son, the bass player. He said, man, this Nicholas played every song Mr. Barker called. All he had to do was call it the key, tell him what key was in.
See that?
And Nicholas played all those old songs that Mr. Barker been playing for years.
See that?
And we grew like a band. We had no bass, we had no piano, all we had drums, Mr. Barker on his banjo, and Nicholas. And the club owner, he was so impressed. He kept looking at Nicholas. He said, wow, that kid can play that horn.
Mm-hmm.
Then the people start coming in. The audience, people start getting the audience now. And they going crazy because I'm introducing Mr. Barker as who he is, the great Danny Barker. You know, letting the people know y'all in for a treat tonight. Because Mr. Barker had never played on Bourbon Street. He ain't never had to do that. But he came out to help me.
That's right.
See? He came out to do that favor for me. He said, I'll come help y'all.
He was invested in the youth and in the community. He really was. He really
You know,
was.
he was very, 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 very vocal in my life, you know, and I miss him and his wife.
Yes.
Miss Blue, she was a sweetheart too, you know. But I just wanted to tell you,
No,
and you know, ever since that, him and Nicholas had became, you know, more acquainted with each other. And he, like I said, he taught Nicholas some things too,
I
you know.
appreciate that.
But that was a big deal for me. And I always remind Nicholas, I said, don't forget I got you your first gig.
Oh yeah, he mentioned that when I interviewed him. He did mention that. He did. He talked about
that was actually his first professional gig.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was playing professional, you know. And his dad was like, I had begged Mr. Payne. I said, Mr. Payne, I said, man, let me do it. He said, man, you gotta ask his mama. So I asked Maria, his mother, and she was like, is he gonna be all right? I said, yes, ma'am. We're gonna do 4 hours and we're gonna be out of it. I'll bring him straight home and blah, blah, blah. And he came home, he had the money, and you know, and when I look up again, Nicholas Payne was.
Yeah, he's there. So Shannon,
Yeah.
what's on the horizon for you?
Well, right now, you know, going through this pandemic right now, I'm doing a lot of lessons on Skype.
Yes.
And Zoom and things like that. I'm also doing live streaming with my band. I have a 3-piece band, and I do some things what we call the Shannon Powell Tread Hour.
Okay.
We've been doing that. Yeah, we do the traditional thing for about an hour. And I did some things for Blue Note. I did a couple of live streams with Blue Note.
Mm-hmm.
And I did one with the Jazz at Lincoln Center. I did one with them, you know. So that's what I'm just trying to, you know, and I've been doing a whole lot of practicing. Just get the chance to just start shading, you know, again on my craft. And me and Hurlin and Jason, we did a song called Get Back about the corona.
It's called Get Back?
Did you hear? If you get a chance, go go online. It's online.
Check it out. Definitely gonna
On
check it
all
out.
the major stations. Yeah,
Yeah.
Get Back. It's a song about Corona.
Okay.
Came out really nice. And but that's what I've been doing, like I said, I've been doing a few sessions. I got a session coming up next week with a local guy here from New Orleans plays the piano.
That's beautiful.
You know, but I'm just trying to keep myself busy as I can because, you know, I haven't worked since March 11th.
Yes, it's been a challenge for
So, you know, it's really hell.
Yeah.
But with the help of the Preservation Hall Foundation has really been helping me out. And I appreciate them. You know, they've been really looking out for me and a whole bunch of other great musicians around here, you know. Yeah.
So what advice would you give young people today?
To stay humble in the business. Learn as much as you can about not only the music part, but the business side of it. Because the business side can be very tricky.
Yes.
And, you know, just stay humble and try to learn as much about your craft as you possibly can. Like I said, you know, I was very blessed and fortunate to have been around some of the great musicians that I was blessed to be around, to learn about how to be not only a great musician, but a great human being and a real man. You know what I'm saying? And I was, like I said, I was really blessed and fortunate. I thank God for all the wonderful times that I had with all the people that I was around. Because, you know, I tell people all the time, I even have a song that says, "Say Goodbye to Old New Orleans." I'm going to put that song out soon.
Oh, yes.
And it's talking about all of the things that I came up around in New Orleans. Blue Plate Mayonnaise, Domino Sugar, Percy Humphrey and the Humphrey Brothers, Paul Barbaran. I even got your daddy's name in there. Talking about all the people that was in my years ago. Say goodbye to old New Orleans.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't wait to check that out.
Yeah.
Well, Shannon, listen, I want to thank you.
Oh, you're going to like it. I've actually played it a few times.
Okay.
I've actually played it a few times on WWO. Yeah.
Well, I want to definitely check that out. You know, I appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. You are truly the real deal.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah,
man. I appreciate you. And I'm sorry for being late again, too.
Oh, no, it's okay. Listen. I appreciate it. You're an inspiration, and I appreciate your contributions as an artist, as a teacher, as a mentor, as a mentee, as an avid supporter, promoter, and connector of our rich New Orleans culture. So thank you so much.
And your son comes and sitting with me all the time.
Yeah, he told me. That's right.
I love him.
Yeah.
He comes and sits with me every chance he gets. He comes and sits. He's a wonderful upcoming young man too.
From Shannon, he talks highly of you all the time. Definitely.
And I love your brother, Jamil. That's my brother.
Oh yeah, man. You family, Shannon.
Thank you.
Family.
Thank you.
Family. You know what? I remember your name from a long time ago from my daddy, and you know, daddy was a character, but yeah,
yes, you was.
Your family, man. So thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. May God continue to bless you and your family.
Thank you so much too. I appreciate that, and the same to you and your family, daughter.
Yes. So everyone, stick around. We're gonna have a special little treat from Shannon later on. This has been Anything and Everything, and until next time, peace and blessings. Wow.